So in my last video I mentioned that the float height was too high and that the gasket was wet. I also noticed that when I started the bike at idle, it ran like a bag of tits. And I thought, okay, the reason why it's a rough idling, because everything else, the ignition was good, the plugs were good, there's no air leaks, no exhaust leaks. I thought it's because I bluffed the float level. So I took it apart again, but this time I decided to reassemble it properly and decided to actually clean up this face, because these faces apparently can distort quite easily. So on my wife's marble worktop, which pissed her right off, I put some wet and dry paper down on there, turned this upside down and started to grind it flat in figure of 8 movements. Did it a few times, turned it a bit, figure of 8 again, and kept doing that until this is nice and flat. Excuse this bodge, I'll explain that later. So anyway, got this surface nice and flat, and then I got a vernier caliper, and inside here I made a mark 2 millimeters down below this lip, and that's basically as high as the float should go. Some people say it should be less than that. Some people say 1 millimeters for Nortons or for twin carb motorbikes. So what I've done is I've gone for about 1.7 millimeters. But you know, you haven't got to be too anal. This is a 1950s, 60s technology anyway. So anyway, when the float goes back in here, like so, I'm not going to put the spindle, and you push down the tabs, this float itself will be about 2 millimeters below that flange there. All right. So anyway, I reassembled this. I thought, great, I've now fixed it, started the bike up, no longer had a problem with the wet gasket, but idling on the bike was still a bag of tits. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to take the carb off again. Basically, what I hadn't done, I hadn't really cleaned the idle circuit of this carburetor. Now, when this bike's idling, I found between 1,000 and 1,500 RPM, it was really lumpy, and adjusting the pilot air screw didn't do a great deal. And then researching it, basically, inside here is where the pilot air screw goes. And if you look here, there's like a casting mark. And on this part here, which I've made with red, this is where you tend to get a blockage. Inside here is a small needle valve, and I believe it's 0.4 of a millimeter in diameter. So you've got a passageway here, which goes down to there. You've got another passageway that I think comes out of here, and so on. So you've really got to make sure that every one of these passageways is really, really clean. So I recommend compressed air, but it still doesn't always clean up this part here. So what I did, I had a piece of wire which is from a bicycle derailleur cable, and I unwound the cable. It's not ideal, it's a bit twisty, and I started to poke it inside the hole. And it's a bit of a fiddle. You think, you know, am I inside there? But eventually you feel it go inside. This sounds so wrong. And then you can make sure that this orifice is nice and clear. So once you've got this through here, I also poked it from this end as well, make sure that's nice and clear. Compressed air again, give it a good clean out, and that's it. So that is now the idle circuit, nice and clean, which it wasn't before, and hopefully now the bike will idle. I will reassemble this and I'll let you know if it's worked or if I was talking cack.